welcome to today's Tuesday Times Roundtable. We're very excited to have a great topic and a great moderator today, as we do every week. Before we introduce our moderator, I wanted to draw your attention to a new student organization that our office has helped get started. They're called Students Offering Support, and they have a dual mission. Mission 1 is to help FIU students pass their classes by offering tutoring, and Mission 2 is to do a sustainable development trip to Latin America. Similar to Alternative Breaks, if you're familiar with AB, we're actually an Alternative Breaks partner site. So right now they are starting their very first tutoring sessions. They are offering tutoring. They found student tutors that are extremely proficient in all the subjects listed on here, and I have a couple extra that I'll give to you all in the front. It's a $12 donation for a 2-hour tutoring, group tutoring session, and that includes a review package from the tutor that you get to keep with some information. And every dollar of that goes to the money that they are raising to perform their service trip in Latin America. We are in the final planning stages of figuring out exactly where they're going and what they're doing. So if you come to a future one, I'll definitely let you know what the specific project is. But they're working so hard to get this off of the ground. And if you or anyone you know needs help in any of these subjects, I highly encourage you to consider attending a session and seeing if it's something that helps you out, and know that every dollar you're spending on your tutoring is going to a really good cause. So I know the front row doesn't have any, but is there anyone who actually might be taking any of these classes that doesn't have a flyer that I can give this to? So is there any back there still? Any chance you can have one? Here. It's also just FIUSOS.com, and you can see exactly what they're offering in terms of tutoring. I'm going to turn it over to our office's Associate Director, Dr. Stephanie Dosher, who will introduce the moderator.
But I won't be spending much time doing it because we came prepared, and Dean Schriner has forbidden me from introducing him as anything beyond the Dean of the College of Architecture and the Arts, and is a good friend. So please welcome our moderator, Dean Brian Schriner.
Good afternoon. I want to thank you for being here. When I was asked to do this, I thought, what could I possibly talk about that would have you would find anything interesting that I might have to say? And something popped into my mind, and it's a story about a lumberjack that I'll start with. And the lumberjack got a job, and the very first week he was on the job, he cut down 20 trees. A day, no problem, like nothing. By the second week, he was down to 15 trees. By the third week, 10 trees. And by the end of the month, he was barely getting 3 trees cut. And he was exhausted. He was spending more time and more energy. He was coming in early, staying late, staying up at night, worrying about why his productivity was going down. And his supervisor called him in and he said, you know, I've noticed you started out amazing, and all of a sudden, in the last month, your productivity has almost bottomed out to nothing. And I notice you're working really hard. And the guy says, I don't know why. I'm here early, I'm here late, I'm doing the best I possibly can. I just don't understand why my productivity keeps going down. And the supervisor asked him one question. Does anybody know what that question might be? He asked him, have you stopped to sharpen your blade? And the guy says, no, I haven't had time. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, is you're taking an hour out of your school day from your classes or from your job. And if we're going to spend that time together, I would hope that the 45 minutes, the 50 minutes that we spend together would be able to, quote unquote, sharpen your blade. That what we talk about doesn't just make you 1 hour older. And you go, that was interesting, but that has nothing to do with my life and what I'm doing. So I'm going to talk for a little bit, but hopefully I'm also going to engage you in some conversation and you'll learn from each other. The topic that I chose to speak about was something called emotional intelligence. And I'll tell you what the definition is later, but let me ask you a question. Have you ever, excuse me, do you believe that the smartest person in your class or in your organization is the leader? No. Does anybody besides me as the dean, think that the smartest person is... No. Does anybody think that the smartest person ascends to the leadership position? Thank you. Most of us don't. Why then? how do you get to the top? It's not always the smartest person that gets to be in charge. So how do you get there? How do people get to the top? Connections? How else? What do you mean by connections? Connections meaning who you know, okay, and who they know. All right. What else? Hard work.
Determination.
Determination. What about things like, go ahead, somebody. Persistence. What about, yeah?
How you deal with people that you meet on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Your,
Interpersonal skills. What about things like trust and honesty and attention to detail and follow through? Right? Those are all things that when you go to work for someone or work with someone that we find valuable in the person, that they're going to pay attention to what needs to be done, that what we tell them, they'll follow through on those things, that they'll keep things confidential when they need to be kept confidential, that when they say something, they mean it, and if they say they're going to do it, they do it. Those are all very, very important things. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, these aren't things that are always taught. They're sort of incorporated into team projects, and we say, well, here's a team project, now go collaborate, and we'll see you later. Right? Unless you're in a communication course which emphasizes those skills, often we're put in positions of working together when we don't always have the soft skills, so to speak, of how to work together. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today. A little bit about how we can improve those softer skills that aren't always included in the curriculum, but are perhaps even more important than the competency skills that you're learning. Like I'm not saying that it's not important to be able to read and write, and, the IQ skills, the reasoning skills, the analytical skills. But a gentleman by the name of Daniel Goleman came up with, he didn't come up with, but he sort of made it popular, this idea of emotional intelligence, which essentially is how attuned are you to what you're feeling and thinking and how that impacts what you do. How attuned, how aware are you of what you're thinking and feeling and how it impacts what you do. So to get that into a little easy rhyme that we can remember, or saying we can remember, I want you to repeat after me. I think. A little louder. I think. I feel. I act. I think. I feel. I act. Now you're on your own. Say it on your own. Do you understand how it goes together then? I think something, right? I have some thought. That thought creates what? A feeling. What are feelings? Emotions, happy, sad, anger, frustration, jealousy, positive, negative, etc. And then based on what we're feeling and thinking, what do? We act. So repeat after me. I think. I feel. I act. Have you ever said or done something you wish you hadn't done? Right? And you go, what do you do? Oh! Shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have said that. Or have you ever not done something that you wish you would have said or done? Oh man, I wish I got caught up and I didn't get to say this or I didn't get to do this. So what is emotional intelligence? People with emotional intelligence have an extra step in that I think, I feel, I act. That extra step is I think, I feel, I think again. I think again. And I think again. And it can be instantaneously or it can be over a long period of time. So repeat after me. I think, I feel, I think again, I act. I think again, I think again, I think again, and then I act. That's the definition that we'll use for emotional intelligence. It's I think, I feel, I think again, and I act. So your brain being a muscle, there's certain exercises that we'll go through today, very simple ones, a few little exercises that you can talk about and perhaps take home to others and use them in your workplace or at home, that you can use to develop these emotional intelligence skills. These skills get your brain to do what? Think again. Think again. Think again, right? We already have the thoughts. They lead to emotions, right? I think this topic is boring. I feel like leaving. And you get up and you leave. My job is to do what? Encourage you to think again and say, well, maybe it's not boring. Maybe there's something useful. Maybe there's something I can actually use. Let me stick around and participate and then let me see what happens. Okay, how do we do that? There's 4 things, and it's not a test or a quiz, but I think it's important that you sort of get the general idea. The 4 things, the 4 competencies that make up emotional intelligence are as follows. The first thing is called self-awareness. How aware are you of you? Often in our lives, when we talk about different communication styles, and there's, we can talk about people who are open or closed or hidden or blind or outgoing, introverted, extroverted, all these different categories that we can talk about. But often we spot other people. Oh, that's like my wife. That's like my friend. That's like my supervisor. That's like my neighbor. But when we ask people, well, which one are you? What do most people say? Oh, I'm not like any of those. I really don't fit in. I'm more complex than those simple ones. I'm a very complex person. So we often don't recognize our own tendencies, communication tendencies. And then we ask other people, I could give you a list if you wanted to, give you a list, and you go home and you ask them, which one of these am I? And they'll tell you, oh, you're like that one. And most of us will say what? No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not like that. I'm more like this one. This is the one I think I'm like. But no, you're really like this one. So what is self-awareness then? You tell me. Being aware of what others, right, what others may perceive you as. Right, there's an old saying, I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. And no, I will not repeat that again. I'm not what I think I am, which means I don't operate in a vacuum. It's not just I get to decide what I am. I'm not what you think I am, which means just because you have a thought about me doesn't make it true for me. I am what I think you think I am. So it's my interpretation of what I think you're thinking about me that influences the way I behave. That's what we call self-esteem or self-concept. So self-awareness, and we'll do some exercises later on self-awareness, but the first step to emotional intelligence then is what? Self-awareness. Kind of stepping back and kind of looking at, well, what do I do in certain situations? How do I communicate? Do I talk more than I listen? Or do I listen more than I talk? Do I ask more questions than not? Do I disclose information without people asking me? Do I force my opinion on other people? Do I go with the flow? All of those different variables, depending on which communication style assessment test you're taking or looking at, we can talk about later. And the second one under self-awareness is self-management. It's saying, okay, now that I kind of understand something about myself, how do I regulate my behavior? So when I'm thinking things and I'm feeling things, do I simply jump to conclusions or simply behave, or do I have that extra step called what? Do I think again? And to do that, let me give you a little exercise. Do you have a pencil and paper or anything? Or maybe you can just do it in your mind. I want you to think of 3 things, whether it be in your personal life or in the workplace, 3 things that annoy you about other people. And don't put their names. And you don't know me well enough to include me yet. So please list 3 things that other people do that annoy you, that kind of get under your skin. I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. Then I'm going to ask for volunteers. Again, no names. You've got a few? Who wants a volunteer one? What's something that... Oh, we got a lot of hands up here. Go ahead, each of you, take your...
Some people, their attitude, their personality, and their opinion.
Okay. Specifically, which personality, which opinion, and which attitude?
Nobody here.
No, not anybody here, but like when you say personality, what personality characteristic?
Oh, like, they try to be too nice. Like
Okay.
Fake.
Fake nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't have anything personality-wise, but chewing gum aloud, and that sound people make when they walk with flip-flops.
Okay, the sound of flip-flops and chewing gum.
If you're familiar with the British television show Are You Being Served?
Mm-hmm.
And the blue, pink, whatever hair color she is of the day, she says, I am unanimous in that decision. It annoys me when people think autonomously, as if they're the only one in the center of all decisions.
Perfect. All right.
Convey what you're trying to do. Like I have a friend who always says, I'm content when she really is content.
Good. All right.
I get
This is a rough crowd. I'm feeling very self-conscious. Or is it conscious? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I get annoyed when people at times are micromanaging me.
Micromanaging. All right. Everybody get a chance. What bothers you about other people?
Overly sensitive people, people with thin skin who can't like take constructive criticism or anything you do, they feel embarrassed. Like I'm a very I'm not a loud person, but I'm very joyful and out there. I like to express myself a lot. And I have some friends that I'm like, oh my gosh, you're embarrassing me. Stop. I don't like that. It annoys me. I just tell them, can you please stop? But guys, I don't like thin skin people.
All right. Thin skin.
Like when people that are intolerant in the workplace, like I'm Hispanic, but people can't normally tell, and I had some like those damn Cubans, blah blah blah, and I'm like, I'm Cuban. Like after work, it was like I try to smile up and everything, but it's like when people like are intolerant like that, like
Intolerance. Good one. Others? There must be hundreds. Yeah.
When people are late
People who are late.
and people that are completely oblivious, like something happens and you know that like it's a fact. It's not even like debatable topic and then they refuse to believe it.
Right. So people who are late and then people who are kind of steadfast in what they're thinking, they just don't change their mind. Is that what you mean?
Well, like oblivious to like the facts. I mean, I'm not talking about evolution or abortion or anything like that, but like the light was red. Like the light is red. That's it. The light wasn't red.
Just the facts.
It always gets back to driving in this room.
Really?
Discussion, driving.
Does driving get under your skin? Do people, when they drive in Miami, bother you? Yeah, road rage, things like that? Right. What else?
People that can't have like a healthy debate or a discussion, because it happens a lot in my organization.
When you say can't have a healthy
You
discussion?
can't sit down and speak like at this level, because he thinks this becomes a yelling contest, and that if he speaks louder, then his opinion is right.
Okay. He who speaks loudest wins.
Yeah.
All right. You have one?
I was just thinking that most of the time applies, right?
People who are not clear to the point, like they go off on tangents and they don't get to the point quick. They just leave you guessing and guessing and guessing. And I just like to get to the point, to move on. So.
People who kind of beat around the bush, so to speak.
Exactly.
Don't get to the point. Others? Things that drive you crazy about in a negative way.
When people are inaccurate, I mean, I won't say lie because that sounds judgmental, but like for example, an example is like oftentimes growing up, I'd be in the car with mom or whatever, she'd be telling me a story about what happened earlier today, and it would be like, no, that's not what happened. That's not right. That's not. It's not like she was lying or anything like that. It was just she was not accurate, and I know that it's perception, but it's still just driving me nuts.
Okay, so lack of accuracy, whether intentional or not,
Yeah.
the idea that people don't get the facts straight. Similar to what you were talking about.
Clingy people.
Clinging people. What's a clinging person?
Oh, a person who they don't have their own individuality. They just like to cling to you on your every word, on your everything they need. They come to you.
Sounds kind of positive.
It is, but after a while it gets overbearing and annoying to have that same person in your face every day calling your phone. You have to answer. Try to be nice. Yeah, it's like, especially in relationships, if you have like a clingy guy, a clingy girl, they're always calling your phone, blowing up your phone every day, every time, and it's like, okay, get a life, do something else, kind of thing. So I'm sorry. That's just I know I'm a little downfall as a person, but yeah, I don't like it.
You notice we're getting a lot of different things. You want to give me a couple more? Give me a couple more. Yeah.
Passive aggressiveness and bullying.
What is the difference?
I think bullying is a little bit more overt sometimes, and I think we fail to stop ourselves from, and our peers and our friends as well, from bullying others, and we encourage that behavior sometimes. And passive aggressiveness, I mean, I think if someone has something negative or impactful to say, I think it should be said versus being backhanded. I think those are as well, both in the workplace.
So passive aggressive would be when you don't say something because you know it'll get underneath somebody's skin?
But you still get under their skin.
You still get, you purposefully, you know, that's like a technique to get under their skin.
Procrastinators, people who think that wait till the last minute and then think that their emergency is automatically your emergency.
All right, failure to plan on your part constitutes an emergency on my part. Good. Others?
When people think too highly of themselves, like when they think they're better than everyone else.
Right, sense of arrogance or self-importance, self-aggrandizement, promote themselves over others.
I have one similar. I know some people I don't like when, like I understand a parent being proud of their child, but when they're overly in your face proud about their child, no, rude.
Rude.
Right.
A lot of these come back to forms of rudeness, right? Interpretation of what's rude and what's not rude.
Oh.
More?
Oh, yeah. People who forget where they come from, like especially in families, you grow up with a set of people, then they get big, or like they get their big job, or they get into acting or something, and then they get all bougie and whatnot, and they can't even talk to you anymore. Yeah, bougie. Bougie is like, you know, they just feel that they've reached so high that they can't talk to the lower people of the earth, which is, you know, the people who don't have all that money or whatever. They move to a different state and all that kind of stuff.
The 1%?
Yeah, the 1%. And they forget about where they come from. That you know, I used to hang with you when I was younger. They pretty much burn their bridges from below and just feel that where they are.
Maybe they're afraid of being clingy.
But yeah, those people.
Good. Any others? One more. Two more. We'll do two more. Go ahead.
Excuses.
People who make excuses for or anything. For not doing what they're supposed to do, for doing things that are wrong, just making sure. It's never their fault.
Yeah.
Never their fault. One more.
When people have a negative attitude, negative outlooks, and then when people are mean, either intentionally or unintentionally, by saying hurtful things or just by simply ignoring you.
Similar to what you were saying here, by bullying or passive aggressive. The idea of manipulating somebody for a purpose. Okay, why are we doing this? I forgot. I would just... Why are we doing this? We're doing this. What's the first part of emotional intelligence? What's that first competency? Self-awareness, and then self-management or self-regulation. So let's look at the things that we talked about. Okay, what do those things tell us? While we're talking about other people, what bothers you about other people? As you might imagine, this is not about other people. It's more about you. I can ask you, what bothers you? So the things that you listed, and you'll notice many people listed different things, and I'm sure while you were listening you thought, oh, why would that bother you? That doesn't bother me. That's like a very petty thing to be worried about. The important thing is that what you listed tells me, thus you, more about you. It's what you value. So listen closely. The things that you listed, or the things that bother you, flip them. Those are the things that you value in yourself. Right? So somebody said late. Right? So that means you value what in yourself? Timeliness or punctuality. That's why when people are late, it bothers you, because it's the opposite of what you value as important. So other people listed many things that could be classified as being insensitive or rude. Why does that bother you when people are insensitive or rude? Because you value in yourself what? Politeness, being sensitive to other people's thoughts and feelings, empathy. So when people behave contrary to what you value as being important, it does what? It agitates you. It makes you mad. What are some of the other ones you listed? So you got rude, insensitive, procrastination. What about procrastination? What does that mean? When someone procrastinates and it bothers you, what does it mean that you value then? Right, attention to detail, organization, getting things done. You can list a whole bunch of things, but you really have to think about it. So what I want you to do is spend a couple seconds in your own mind thinking about, okay, what did I list? And then are those the things that I really value about myself? And then if they're not, tell me. If anybody listening says, oh, that's really not. No. Right? It never happens because that's why they make you mad. Because those are things you value in yourself. So the first exercise we just completed was about self-awareness. What do we now know about ourselves? What bugs us? Yeah, what we value in ourselves, and then that's why things bother us. What's the definition that we talked about of emotional intelligence? I think, I feel, I think again, I act. So we're just now at the I think part. Now we kind of know why we think what we think. Now let's talk about what we do about it. So the things that bother you about other people are what we'll call, for our purposes, hot buttons.
I'm sorry, I just want to, but why do those things make us feel hot? If there are things that go against what we value in ourselves, and yet they're characteristics of the other. Right. So is it because the fact that the other person can get away with it and you feel like you can't, and that's why why is it that...
Why do certain things bother you that don't bother other people?
Well, for instance, if I said that people who are late,
right,
bother me, anger me,
right,
and that reveals that I value timeliness in or punctuality in myself.
Or it could be that you care about other people's thoughts and opinions, that your professionalism, whatever it is that you do. Yeah.
Right. Why then is it that there's an emotional reaction when another person is late? If, I'm just curious as what the connection is.
Because most of us value what our values are as being good. So I'm a good person, so if I value punctuality, why can't you value punctuality? Right? I found a way to get here on time, why wouldn't you find? Right? I found a way to do this, why, I'm nice, why can't you be nice? I'll get back to it in a second. Let me give other people a chance to answer the same question. Go ahead.
To kind of answer that, the quote that you told us, the things that bother you about others are exactly what you value about yourself.
Correct.
I've heard it interpreted in another way, that the things that bother us about other people are what bother us about ourselves, that we want to fix about ourselves.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we're late and that angers us because it's just a reflection of us.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's not the image we want to portray to other people. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Another reason why it might be based on our culture and our upbringing. Like I listed chewing gum aloud, and she said it's a reflection of ourselves. When I was younger, I used to do it because of the fact that my grandmother does it. She's from Georgia. She's Southern. So a lot of people in those areas, they chew gum aloud. They like to drink iced tea and things of that nature. And as far as the flip-flops, and I also listed bad grammar, is because she came to Miami when she was a young girl, and she actually attended FIU when she was younger. And so that education that she gained, she kind of, she basically made it where she didn't want my mom and my generation to go about the same route. So it's a lot of it is your upbringing, how you're brought up, how you're reared as a child. So I guess a lot of that.
We'll call all those things your culture. Yeah. Right? Your frames of reference. Thoughts, beliefs, opinions, attitudes, all those things combined. Do any two people in the same room have the same frames of reference or same culture? No, we have similarities, but not just because you share a language do you all think everything the same. This is good, this is bad, all because we share a language or a skin color or an age group or a gender. Right? There's a lot of things that go on in between. So you're correct. All the things that make you you influence what? What you think. What bothers you today probably didn't bother you when you were 7. And what bothers you today may not bother you tomorrow or 15 years from now, because you'll change and the things that bother you change.
Well, this might reflect on all the other concerns, but when she said that the person didn't value time, what she was saying is the person didn't value her.
Correct.
Her time. And when people don't value the things maybe that you value, they're not valuing you or respecting you.
Right. I would agree. I would agree. So we now have a sense of what each of us values, for lack of a better term. These are things that we hold in esteem about ourselves. So when people do things or behave in a way that we perceive as contrary, then it does what? It bothers us. It gets under our skin. And we call those things that bother us what? Hot buttons. So what's the second competency of emotional intelligence? Self-awareness and self-management, self-regulation. So how do we regulate? When we think somebody's disrespecting us or doing something contrary to our values, how does it make us feel? Angry, frustrated. Then how are we going to behave? Right? When you're angry, do you behave the same way when you're not angry? Right? When you're jealous, do you behave the same way when you're not jealous? Right? So what Goldman called, well, what I'm calling hot buttons, Goldman called emotional hijacking. We get hijacked. Our emotions sort of take over, and we start saying things and doing things that we normally probably wouldn't do without thinking about them again. So we become emotionally hijacked. Can you give me an example, not too graphic of an example, but a general example perhaps in the classroom or in the workplace where you've become emotionally hijacked that led you to say or do something? You can? All right, Stephanie.
Oh, come on, you're ratting me out. Okay, so yesterday there was something that an individual...
Hypothetically,
yes,
yesterday.
Okay, with whom, you know, okay, does on a regular basis. And that thing is to hang up the phone without saying goodbye.
So that bothers you because?
Because I value saying goodbye.
Because. It's not the word saying goodbye.
Closure. You know,
It's all-
closure and it's, you know, I mean, it's common, it's courtesy.
Courtesy, politeness, it's
Rituals of courtesy, right. And I lost it. Of course, my feathers were ruffled when I came in already, but that, you know, I came very close to picking up the phone and saying
Telling
something.
HR,
yes,
goodbye.
yeah. But instead, I fantasized about the next time that it that it happened and what I would do.
So why is this important? Thank you for sharing that. Why is it important then that we understand what our hot buttons are?
So that we don't get fired because it was that person, you know.
Right? Right. You could say something that could jeopardize your job or the other person's job or your safety. You ever been driving down the highway and somebody cuts you off and you decide, oh, I'll get back at you. I'm going to go 80 miles an hour and then cut in front of you and slow down. And then what happens? I don't know. I don't know. There's an old saying, it's like drinking poison and then waiting for the other person to die. The only person that gets frustrated and angry and emotional is who? You. And the other person could care less in most cases. Like, let's assume, for sake of argument, that being late bothers me. So somebody walks in late, way past now, right? If it bothers me, what might I be thinking about that person? How disrespectful. Don't you know what time it is? Don't you know what we're only here for an hour and you walk in 45 minutes into the lecture? I mean, that's really rude. So my mind starts doing what? Making judgments and hypotheticals and So when the person asks me a question, how might I respond? Huh, you should have come on time. We already covered that. Next. And you may have been in classes. Well, you know, that's your problem. You missed the lecture, so that's the way it goes. You know, come on time next time, you'll learn. So we say things and do things that in hindsight, probably not. So we've actually adopted, listen closely, this is the key point. We actually adopt the behavior that we what? Despise. We become like the person that annoyed us because that's what most of us do. We respond, we reciprocate with the same type of behavior. Maybe we don't do the same thing, like I can't be, if you're late, I can't be late because I'm already here. But I interpret it as being rude, so how will I respond to your rudeness? With my own rudeness. So I'm rude, therefore you become even more, in my mind, agitated and rude, and it's a cycle. So usually when I do these types of seminars, people say, well, how do you break that cycle? And I say, I have no idea. I don't. I have no idea how you break the cycle. The only advice I can give you is what? Don't get in the cycle. And how do you not get in the cycle? By understanding what your hot buttons are. So when people do things that annoy you, ask, why am I being so, what's so annoying about that? What's our motto? I think, I feel, I think again. So let's talk a little bit about what we do in the I think again. What would you be doing in the I think again? Okay. Is this a hot button? Am I being emotionally hijacked?
Yeah, and then try to put like different reasons on why it may have happened to
Right.
person.
And that thing is called empathy. Empathy is different than sympathy. Right? If, God forbid, somebody passes away, do we send them an empathy? Well, we wouldn't send it to them, to their family, do we? Because they wouldn't be able to read it. Do we send it to their family? Do we send a sympathy card or an empathy card? Sympathy. So sympathy card says what? I feel for you. I'm sharing the same emotion you are. I'm sad because you're sad. Right? What's empathy? No. Empathy doesn't mean that I'm sharing the same feeling with you. It means I'm right. I'm kind of putting myself in your place. Right? So that's not a very nice message to send somebody who's lost a loved one. I'm pretending that I've lost my own loved ones and I can imagine how you feel. No, that's not comforting. Empathy, though, in this situation works because empathy says, let me think about why that person's behaving in that way. What might be their intention, whether it's intentional or unintentional, and why it bothers me. I don't have to solve it. I don't even have to know the right answer. But by thinking about it, what am I doing? Somebody mentioned their grandmother, and this used to just be called maturity. We used to just say, slow down, count to 10. Don't say or do anything until you count to 10 when you're angry. But now we come up with psychological terms for growing up. So you grow up, you count to 10, and you do what in that 10 seconds? Yeah, well, if I respond like this, how is he or she going to respond to me? And then where are we going to go from there? And do I want to go there? So if I yell at you, can I take that back? I looked around the room and I noticed there's 3 or 4 professors in the communication arts department. Is communication irreversible? No, you can never take it back. You can say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, oops, but you can't erase it. So if I say something or write something to you or behave non-verbally in a certain way towards you, can it ever be removed? So what should I be doing then? Thinking about what I'm doing. So it's intentional, not unintentional. So if I'm going to yell at you, I understand why I'm yelling at you, and this is what I want to do. I'm not advocating yelling at people, but at least I understand what I'm about to say and do. Am I making sense? Yes. Okay, so hot buttons are what? Emotional hijacking, things that get under your skin. The third concept of emotional intelligence was what? Or competency was what? I talked about self-awareness, self-management, and social awareness. That was the third one we talked about, social awareness. It's empathy. Empathy is social awareness. You see how we're doing this chronologically? So I understand a little bit about myself. I understand what my hot buttons are. how I get emotionally hijacked. And while I'm thinking again, what am I thinking about? Social awareness, i.e. empathy. And to drive that point home a little bit further, let me give you a story about an elephant. And some of you may have heard the elephant story, but I think it's relevant here. There's 5 blind men. Obviously, they've never seen an elephant. They've only heard the term elephant. So when they bring the elephant to the town, the 5 blind men go out to kind of figure out what is this thing called an elephant. The first man grabs a hold of the elephant's tail, and he proudly proclaims, an elephant is like a rope. It's long and thin and bristly. Ta-da! The second blind man has a hold of the elephant's leg. And in his mind, what is he thinking? What's wrong with the first guy? An elephant is nothing like a rope. An elephant is like a tree trunk. The third blind man has touching the elephant's side. What's he thinking about the other 2? Well, the second guy has it a little bit closer than the first guy, but the first guy's way off. The elephant is more like a wall. The fourth one, the ear, experiences the elephant differently. The fifth one, the elephant's trunk, similar to the first one, but more like a snake than a rope. In fact, so which of the 5 blind men is correct? They're all correct. The elephant is like all of those things. And which of the 5 blind men is incorrect? They're kind of all wrong, because the elephant is like none of those things. So what's the moral of the story? Don't trust blind men with elephants who describe elephants. No, that's not the moral of the story. But a good one. What's the moral of the story then?
Unless you see things from another person's perspective, you don't get the whole picture.
Could be. Could be. I was thinking more along the lines, the moral would be that when you experience the world, right, through your senses, how many senses do you have? 5, right? You see it, taste it, you smell it, you hear it, touch it, etc. Those are your 5 senses. So when you experience the world, to you, i.e. experience the elephant, the world, to you it's what? It's real. And there's no one that can convince you it's not. We talked about growing up and culture and identity and all those things. So when you're experiencing the world as X, 19-year-old college junior majoring in the College of Business who wants to be the president of Exxon, that's your world. That's what you're experiencing. Someone else experiencing the world differently through their senses has what? A very different perception of the elephant, i.e. the world. So who's right and who's wrong? You're both right, but in the end you're both wrong. So empathy would tell us what? Right, not that you're right and I'm wrong, or vice versa, but if I have a conflict with you and you're bothering me, what should I be thinking? Why are you doing, hypothetically, why are you behaving that way? Is there anything that, in my position, perhaps, or this is a good one for you actually, because I always use the same example in my lectures. I don't know what it's like to be the receptionist at a very heavily trafficked front desk. To me, that would have to be the worst job imaginable. Because the only people that walk up to that desk have a problem. Right? They don't just walk up to say, good morning, how are you? Have a nice day, bye. They walk up to give you what? Yeah, give you something to do, but they expect what from you? Kindness, courtesy, and a solution to my problem. That's what you're there for. So when you can't provide them with a solution to their problem, often the receptionist or the front desk person receives what in return? In response to my kindness and courtesy, you're mad at me because I can't solve your problem. That's an extremely difficult job from my perspective. So when I'm trying to go back to the empathy. So if I would have a conversation with someone who has a job like that, my job isn't like that. So if this person's having what I would call a bad day, what might I think about when I'm having the conversation with them? Do you realize that could be like the 800th person that come up to them today and gave them a hard time? You know, in my job, most people don't give me a hard time. They're nice to me. Other people's job is everybody's mean to them. And it's kind of, they're just expected to be nice in return. That's a very, very difficult job, is to reciprocate with niceness when people are not nice to you first. So empathy would tell us what? Consider their situation. Not that they're right, or that therefore they're allowed to be rude to people, just because people are rude to them. But when I'm dealing with them, which is the next step, which is the fourth step of emotional intelligence? Relationship management. How do I go about managing the relationship now? What do I say and what do I do? I want you to stand up for 1 second. Just stand up for 1 second. Thank you for I want one of you, you're going to pair up in teams. And I want one of you to hold your fist up as high as you possibly can. Right? Just one of you. One person, hold your fist up as high as possible. And I want your partner, your job in the next 5 seconds is to get them to open their fist. On your mark, get set, go.
Not fair. Over here.
Okay, stop. Everybody stop. Okay, go ahead, sit down for a second. I know it's kind of unfair because while you were engaged with your partner, I had a chance to observe everybody that was going on. Did anyone else get a chance to look around the room and see what was happening? Well, about 80% of you were in a struggle to unclench the other person's fist. A few of you instantaneously got the other person to open their fist. I'm going to guess that happened because you asked them. And then the other 19% resorted to tickling. Something. And that's pretty much the percentages of how things get done in the world. About 80% of us try to force other people to do what we want them to do. Right? And when you were trying to force someone, what was the other person doing in return? Resistance, right? They were trying to get their way. So the harder you tried, the other person reciprocated, and I've used that term a lot on purpose, reciprocated how? They hunkered down. You're not going to get it. Now, if you opened your fist, was there a reward at the end of this? Did I say if you get their fist open, you get $1 or $100, or you get to go home early, or you get a raise? No. So there was no incentive. It was just, I'm going to whoop your behind. Right? I'm just going to make you do it because I can force you to do it. And the other person will say, no, you're not. Even though I open my fist, I don't get anything or you don't get anything, except I'll feel like a loser. So because you're trying to force me, I'm not going to let you do it. What does that tell us about relationships then? When we attempt to force our opinions or our thoughts, and this is one of the things that we talked about earlier, on other people, generally people respond with what? Nuh-uh. No, you're not going to convince me. No, you're not going to force me. Why? I may even agree with you. But the fact that you're trying to force me without engaging me in some kind of discussion or asking me, I'm just not going to let you do it. So force is usually met with what? Force. So if the person was able to pry your fingers open because they were stronger than you or whatever reason, how did you feel often? Yeah, you felt like, I'm going to get you back. Right? There's a sense of, I got to get you back sometime because what you did to me was not right. So there's a little bit of revenge on our mind about, okay, just because you can force me to do it doesn't mean that you're better than me. Those of us who bribed and tickled. What does that lead to? Right? I poked you in the stomach, you opened your fist, I said, ha ha. Right? The Simpsons, ha ha. What happens then? That's a person who opened their fist. How do you feel? Keeping with the Simpson analogy. Like, I can't believe they tricked me into opening my fist. So you even feel a little bit tricked or lessened and outsmarted. And then the few of you who asked someone to open your fist, did anybody ask and somebody say no? I have no answer for you people. You're my hot buttons. Because there's nothing to open it. Okay, fine. So when we talk about relationship management, I hope that little exercise hits home with you and that you think about it when you're working with people. Often when we force people by our position, our authority, or just because we can, or because we said so, and we think, oh, we're all getting along great. Often people resent the fact that you're forcing them to do things, even if they would have done them naturally, without some kind of what? Some kind of dialogue about why we're doing it, for what purpose, how's it benefiting everybody in the room, whatever, some kind of common courtesy. Going back to one of the very common themes around the room was hot buttons, things that drive people nuts, are when people do what? They don't respect us. When you feel disrespected or you feel like someone's not thinking of you, whether it be cutting you off in traffic, coming in late, being insensitive, all those things kind of come back to what this gentleman up here in the corner said, I'm not respecting you. And when we feel disrespected, we often reciprocate with what? Being disrespectful in return, because that's the natural defense mechanism. So, with a few minutes left, you have questions on this stuff? So let's do our model. I think, I feel, I think again, and I act. What are we doing when we think again? What are we doing? What am I trying to get you to think about when I say think again? Think about what? Think about empathy. Think about other people's values. Think about your self-awareness. Right? What do I value? Think about, is this a hot button? Am I emotionally hijacked? Think consequentially. If I do this, what will he or she do in return? Is this where I want to go? Is this a battle worth fighting? Is this something I want to force someone? Is it better simply to ask as opposed to tell? Right, so in that think again, hopefully you're thinking about everything we talked about, and then ultimately you will act. Right? I think, I feel, I think again, I act. Can you undo the action? You can't. You can't. You can apologize for it. You can ask for forgiveness, but you can't erase it. You can't be a bully in the morning and then in the afternoon say, oh, forget about it. It's no big deal. Okay, whatever you say. Ain't going to happen. Okay, the article that I asked you to look at. Did anybody get a chance to look at it? All right. It's not that we necessarily have to discuss it here. I mean, we can, of course. But I think it's something that talks about, not in the same terms, I think, I feel, I think again, I act. But at Google, they do some of the things we're talking about here. And the gentleman, Mr. Tan, teaches this seminar, self-help, whatever you want to call it, management course called what? SIY, Search Inside Yourself. And a lot of the characteristics we're talking about, he has 3 steps that his class, it's a 6-week class taught for Google employees, not about IQ and reasoning skills and thinking and quantitative analysis. It's assumed that everybody there has those things, just like when you go into the workplace. It's assumed you're going to have a certain level of job competency. What distinguishes you from others in the workplace then? Not your IQ, but your, what we'll call EQ, your emotional quotient. How well you handle yourself in the workplace. How well you get along with other people. I started this by asking you a question. What was the question? Is the smartest person always in charge? And I don't think anybody raised their hand and said yes. So it's not about being the smartest, it's about being competent and having what? Emotional skills. The ability to deal with other people, to think about what you're saying, think about what you're about to write, think about your decision making, include other people in conversations, and respect them. So Mr. Tan has this 3-step process, and if you look on the first page, I assume it's the same on yours, but the 3-step process is kind of near the bottom. It says the class has 3 steps: attention training, self-knowledge and self-mastery, and creation of useful mental habits. That's essentially the same things we talked about. Self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, and relationship management. That's what that's about. So if you get a chance, look at the article this afternoon, and you'll see many of the things we talked about today being used in Google. Do you have questions for me? Because I know you have class in 5 minutes or something, but do you have questions for me? I apologize I talked too much. That's probably one of the things that annoy you, but have a little empathy, because I don't get to talk to people a lot.
This will be a group thing. So next time this person hangs up,
right?
Okay, because yesterday it was done to somebody else and it bothered me, but it's going to be done to me next time.
Right.
Should I tickle and say something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm sorry. Did we get cut off because we weren't able to say goodbye?" Or, and this person is a superior. This person is a superior.
Right.
Okay. It's not my direct boss. I should say that. Or should I simply say, "Please don't hang up on me"?
I don't know enough to tell you the situation, but hypothetically,
Yeah.
what I would do is in a threatening environment, next time you see the individual,
Yeah.
just ask them,
Sometimes
you know, when you don't always say goodbye and you hang up on me, why?
Like, what am I
And they'll say, "Oh my God, I didn't realize I was doing it. I apologize.
way,
I apologize. I wasn't even aware. I wasn't self-aware that I was hanging up on you without
Sure.
saying goodbye." In a limited, and if they say, "Yeah, well, that's the way I do it, so live with it."
Yeah.
Now you know. Now you know. No, now you think about, okay, based on the person knows that they're purposefully annoying me and being rude, and they're aware of it, okay, now what do I do? As opposed to trying to figure out why they're behaving the way they're behaving,
And I can
just ask them.
them. Yeah.
Just ask them. Other questions? Did you enjoy this?
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. So I hope when we went back we had the axe. What was the story of the axe about? Did we spend a few minutes sharpening your blade? I hope so. So when you go out and you meet with people out there, hopefully you'll think about some of the things we talked about. Okay, thank you. Have a good day.